good food, and all the stuff in between. And our goal with these live talks is to give you some really good information with high value and some action items that we give you at the end. So stay to the end and get those things and make some changes in your life.
Stay to the end. If you're with us live on Facebook in our Just for Fun group, Drop the Fat, Not the Tacos, or in our coaching group, the Clean Club coaching group, give us a thumbs up, or maybe you're watching on one of our personal profiles. That's awesome too. Tell us you're here though.
Yes,
Let us know
do.
You're watching, and you can be part of the conversation. Ask some questions. Also, if you're listening to our podcast on one of our streaming channels, then come check us out on Facebook, because that's where you can be part of what we're doing here.
Exactly.
So.
Yes. What are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? So we like to answer questions, right? And this is one of the biggest ones that comes up. When we eat, when should I be eating? When should I not be eating? Right? That can have a pretty big impact on things, surprisingly big impact, actually. And I used to really underestimate this in my own life. So this is one of the things that I consider a core habit. So we run our habit reset challenge, right? Yep. And one of our core habits is when we eat.
Yes. Why?
Because it's about more than calories. Because calories matter, yes. But we grew up in that whole like calories in, calories out thing.
Yep.
All right. And there's just more to it than that. And when we eat can have a pretty profound effect.
More than we think.
Way more than we think. Yep. Definitely. Right. Like we grew up with that, like breakfast is the most important meal of the day thing. I don't know.
Not?
It's well, that was made not by, dietitians and nutritionists or health professionals. That was made by the agricultural industry. So also when you eat can dictate a lot about like what you eat. Right?
I know that really well.
Who eats broccoli after 10 in the evening? Right?
Not usually.
No. Nobody is going into the kitchen to get a healthy snack.
No. And you know that I was a big skeptic about this when we first started working together.
Totally.
I was like, intermittent fasting, not eating before this time, not eating after 8 o'clock. Like, what is that? But it actually turns out that when you eat is actually pretty important.
It really
is. Okay. So Brandon, right off the bat, the biggest thing that I hear a lot from people is that they're going to run out of energy if they don't eat, right? Because they think their energy comes from the last meal that they ate.
Right.
Is that true?
That is not true. Okay, that's not where our energy is all coming from. So
didn't we do a talk about this not too long ago with some buckets and shovels and stuff?
Yeah. So we've got. I don't want to like go back into that. But glycogen stores, right? They last 14 to 16-ish hours unless you're doing like long or strenuous exercise. So we also forget that fat is fuel, right?
Yes.
We're covered in a fuel source, and our bodies are never, for the most part, right? And we try to trick them into, using only one form of energy or another, right? We're always trying to trick our bodies into using fat as fuel. And it is always available, and there's a reason for that. But another thing to think about is insulin sensitivity as well.
This was a new one to me. I didn't know anything about this until we talked about it.
Yeah, that's super, super important. And it can be a pretty complex topic. But one of the things to think about, though, is that the idea of intermittent fasting originally came from treating diabetics.
That blew my mind. I was like, "What?"
Yeah, and then it became something else. So there are a few different things to think about here. But no, your last meal is not the thing that is fueling you.
Well, I remember when I first started my weight loss journey and was like really focused on losing some weight. I had one person, and then since then, several people tell me, ignore all that nonsense. You don't need to worry about when you eat or what you're eating. If you're hungry, just eat something.
Right.
And I hear that actually a lot combined with, oh, you should eat frequently because if you snack, it wakes up your metabolism and it speeds it up and it'll really get it going. And that's how you're going to lose weight, is if you're constantly eating. So, and then also that should kickstart your metabolism if you eat breakfast early in the morning, right? Like, boom, get it going.
Yeah, totally not.
Is that real?
How it works. No, no, it's not how it works at all.
Not a real thing.
No, not a real thing. But you'll hear it a lot. And I've even heard people, who I've heard that repeated by professionals a bit. And I think it's just kind of one of those things that like, oh, that makes sense. And it sounds like it makes sense, but it's not how it works.
But it doesn't make sense.
No, well, our bodies, like they have really pretty complex patterns and rhythms, and our diurnal cycle has a lot to do with that. Like our waking and sleeping patterns have a lot to do with this. So, another thing to think about. One, I also wanted to mention that like this isn't an intermittent fasting talk, right? Like that's not what we're after here.
That is focused around when you eat, but that's not the only thing to when you eat. And intermittent fasting isn't something everybody can implement in their lives.
Totally,
right?
Totally. And if you hear snoring, it's because Captain's back here. Captain Waffles is just like snoozing back here. And so if you hear snoring, that's what's going on. I'm not just really hungry. So
you mentioned the diurnal cycle, though. That is interesting to me because I didn't realize that when we talked about like, when you wake up first thing in the morning, like eat something right away, why that's not necessarily the best thing for you.
Right. Because our body is waking up. Right. So like immediately before we wake up, Captain's just snoring away back here. Immediately before you wake up, your body starts kind of flooding you with hormones and neurotransmitters, and it's telling you to get up and move.
Yeah.
So you are not in rest and digest mode when you wake up. So it really throws your body off to just wake up and immediately eat.
Right.
And I get it because I was totally one of those people who forever, like my whole life, I was like, I just wake up hungry. And it's true. That was just the pattern that I had like established for myself. Yes. Breakfast is the most important meal. Now, when I think about it, I was never hungry immediately when I woke up as a child. But because I grew up in that culture, and it was always like, make sure you eat your breakfast, make sure you eat your breakfast, make sure you eat your breakfast.
You have to eat before you
go to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I just fell into it. And before I knew it, I was an adult. It's really bad. He's snoring so loud. Before I knew it, I'm an adult. And I'm like, why do I just wake up starving? And well, that's why breakfast is the most important meal. So it's funny what we can train our bodies and our brains into.
Yeah, creating a habit.
Yeah. And I still have, we still have people when we start talking about the eating window, right? And not eating immediately when we wake up. We had a few people in the most recent habit reset go, oh, that's great. Because I never want to eat when I wake up, but I force myself to eat.
Right. Because I thought I had to.
Because I thought, that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
So, there are a few other things to talk about as well. Like our bodies are really good at, sort of along the same lines. Our bodies are really good at tricking us into thinking that we're hungry when we're really just like dehydrated, or no one can relate to this, but just feeling emotionally compromised, or, eating our feelings or eating at our problems. I do that.
I'll show you my feelings all the time.
Right. We all do that. And that's, it's sort of a natural-ish thing to do. It's a tendency that makes sense. Oh man, Cap.
He's really tired.
But it's those things are, we have to be mindful of those things, right? I have to take a look at, like, I'm not great about hydration, and when I am good about staying hydrated, my hunger cues are just like way less, right?
Totally.
Like I don't get them nearly as often. So
I remember when you first told me about that, when we were doing the habit reset for the very first time, when I did your 12-week program, and you were like, oh, if you feel like you're hungry, just have a swig of water. I bet you're dehydrated. And I thought, that's stupid. If I'm hungry, I'm
I want
hungry.
to eat, yeah.
Like my stomach
Yeah.
is empty. I want to eat. But in all actuality, I wasn't drinking enough. So therefore, I was more dehydrated than I thought I was. And so my body's like, put something in us. Oh, it just needed water. How about that?
Yeah. We confuse thirst cues for hunger cues a lot. Like that's a really common thing. So let's see. We started talking about insulin sensitivity.
Oh, yes, that.
Captain is snoring so loud. Like I can't even wake him up either. He's just like snoring.
Down for the
like,
count.
Petting him. So insulin sensitivity, yeah, it's really important to have breaks from that insulin response to food, right? Because this is right. That's the hallmark of diabetes, right? Type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance, and insulin is like any other substance, right? When we have it constantly pumped into our bloodstream and into our body, we become resistant to it, right? We stop responding to it as much. And since our body is like recognizes that and it's dealing with such a balance, that it starts going like, whoa, well, we're not responding to that. So you need more of it, right? It's just,
Right.
Your body, it's funny, like little, like kind of drug seeking behavior, right? Like that's not working. I need more. So that's what starts to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why like, I'm distracted by Cap snoring. That's why intermittent fasting was so effective, was because it started to reverse that a little bit in diabetics and start creating that insulin sensitivity, which is good. The reason that insulin sensitivity is important and resistance is bad, part of it is because of the cortisol response as well, right? Anytime that we've got insulin going into the bloodstream, cortisol is our body releases cortisol to process the insulin, and cortisol has its place. It's important, but it creates some other undesirable issues, right? And so and we are finding that, I know I'm talking for a really long time, they're finding with research that obesity is tied a lot more to insulin and insulin sensitivity and cortisol than it is to just simple calories in, calories out. Oh my God, man. It's so loud. Oh, well, I don't know. I don't even know if you guys can hear that.
I know that, well, I now practice intermittent fasting, and I know you just said you don't want all of this to be all about intermittent fasting because there's more to it than just intermittent fasting about when we eat. But let's talk a little bit about it just for a second. Because when you first brought this up with me a few years ago, I was like, oh, anything with the word fasting in it is just bad. It's wrong. Like, let's not do it. And it was a hard no for me. I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing intermittent fasting. And so you told me that there was a really, really good rule of not eating 3 hours before you go to bed or 3 hours after you wake up. And I did eventually go, okay, well then let me give this a try, and realize that for me, intermittent fasting was really helpful because it helped me make sure I wasn't snacking late at night and eating garbage and, feeding those hunger pangs and not forcing myself to eat in the morning when I wasn't hungry. And I actually didn't start to get hungry until like 3 or 4 hours after I woke up. Yeah. It's kind of funny like that, right? The body is really good at kind of tricking us into that. Like I just talked about, that like the later I eat, the earlier I want to eat when I wake up. It just kind of helps break up that pattern a little bit. But also, I mean, that has to do with our hormonal cycle that's always going on, right? We stop before 3 hours before bed because we are fully in rest and digest mode. Yes. Right. You should be metabolizing your previous meal, your last meal. Yes. Before you go to bed. You should not be going to bed having just eaten. Right.
Right. Because then your body's doing other stuff.
Right. No
Right.
food babies when you go to bed.
It's all about repair. And,
Mhm.
there's a lot that goes on when you sleep, and it's not good to be like digesting a just, recently consumed meal, right. While you're sleeping.
You did have some good points though about like going back to, if you imagine back in caveman times,
Right.
and when
Yeah.
we would have to actually hunt our food, we couldn't just open the fridge and be like, what am I going to eat at
Yeah.
7 o'clock in the morning? Like, you actually had to get up and go find your food before you could eat it. That
Right.
it actually kind of ties back to that
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't want to that's how we're designed. We're designed to be going out and hunting and gathering,
Right.
basically. And so, we're really kind of disobeying that rule. This is very recent that we just have like stored food sitting around all the time. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, this is more about like having a reasonable eating window that obeys what our body is trying to do. God, Cap.
If you can hear him, this is hilarious.
Yeah, he's snoring super loud. I
He's
hope
so
you
happy.
can't hear him, actually, because now otherwise I just sound crazy. And then late at night, really, when we're like tired and giving into our critter brain, right?
Mhm.
Our reptilian brain, right? Our very basic functioning survival brain. It's telling us to get comfortable, and digest.
Yes.
And rest. So we should not necessarily like be continuing to eat.
Right. But also, it's important to note that we usually eat crap at those late night hours between 9 and 10, right? That's when I feel hangry or I'm bored. And so I'm like, I'm going to go find something. And most of us don't have like chopped up carrots and, like you said, broccoli in the fridge. Let me just eat these healthy, delicious vegetables. No, we grab the chocolate chips or, the tortilla chips and salsa that's sitting in the fridge.
The comfort foods, right? Yeah, all the stuff that makes us feel really, like...
I'm just going to have a couple pretzels, and the next thing you know, the whole bag is empty.
Yeah, our brain is really good at that. So, that's something that we always have to kind of work on. Our best decision making is definitely not happening at late at night.
So, but if you get hungry at like 9 or 10 at night, what's a good thing to do? You have a really good one that I try to do as much as possible, and I'm not very good at it. But
I mean, I have like some favorite teas that I have around that help me. For me, like at the beginning when I was like trying to kind of break this habit of wanting to eat late at night, I had to practice just sort of walking myself through this. Like I would just tell myself, because I know that cravings are very short-lived, right?
Yes.
They tend to be like 2 minutes, 4 minutes. And so I knew that if I could just like get past that, so I'll just kind of tell myself, like have that running dialogue. Like if I still want this in 5 minutes, okay, I'll do it.
Right.
And every once in a while, like 5 minutes would go by and I'd be like, oh shit, like I do still want to do this. And I would just go, well, maybe 5 more minutes. And a lot of the time I just ended up like, just going to bed, and it was fine.
Yeah.
So that has worked for me. The tea thing works
is good.
Really well for me. Yeah. Make something with, hot water.
We talked about that in our habit reset also, and some of the women brought up a good point that if you drink tea too late at night, you might be up all night long needing to go use the restroom. So after dinner, what I try to do, or what I have been doing, is I try to have tea then. Like I'm finished eating, I'm going to have tea. It'll help with my digestion. It'll help me feel full, that, maybe give that a shot. Like right when you're done eating, have a nice good cup of tea.
Yeah, absolutely.
But while we're on the subject, let's talk about snacking. Enough with fasting. Let's talk about snacking.
Yeah.
Something that I used to do far too much of. Actually, it's quite fascinating. When we first started working together, I thought I ate plenty. And my biggest problem why I wasn't losing weight or able to lose weight was I wasn't eating enough because I was snacking throughout the day. And I would really like to rehash the conversation we had about snacking with our participants in the habit reset, because we talked about that and brought up some good points.
Yeah. There are a few reasons. One of them is that like that late night eating.
Yes.
Captain. Like that late night eating, like when we do find ourselves snacking, it's hardly ever like on healthy options. right? And by healthy, I'm talking about like whole foods.
So you're not in favor of snacking, is what you're saying?
I'm big time not in favor of snacking.
No
Actually,
snacking.
yeah, I really like snacks tend to be like almost all, processed carbs,
Right.
right?
Yeah, like
So, or
chips,
refined flours, yeah, chips,
pretzels. Oh, I
pretzels,
love
all
pretzels.
sweet stuff. And what I hate about it is that it's just like it's this constant. It's very like habit forming.
Yeah.
Right. It's this constant like dopamine, dopamine,
Mm-hmm.
dopamine. I mean, talk about like eating your feelings. Most of the time we're snacking is
Yep.
because we're bored,
I was
right?
going to say that's exactly what happens when I eat my feelings is I'll have a couple pretzels. I'll go to put the pretzels away because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to have a couple of these. There's some
Yeah.
Honey Nut Cheerios in here. I'll just have some Honey Nut Cheerios. Oh, look at that. I found the cookies. I'll just have one or two of those.
Yeah. And then we come back to like the insulin sensitivity thing as well, right?
Yeah.
Every time we eat, right? That's our body, again, responds with insulin to process that meal, and then cortisol process the insulin. Constant eating means constant insulin and constant cortisol, and again, that's how diabetes happens.
Yes.
So yeah, big problem.
Yeah.
Big problem.
Okay. So lastly, since our whole jam is about habits, if you're snacking and eating all the time and training your body, we mentioned this a little bit, but you're training your body and you're training your brain to always be hungry.
Right.
At a point, you're going to go, oh gosh, it's 3:00. We're always snacking at 3:00. I'm hungry. Let's eat.
Yeah.
And this was actually where the biggest part for me, intermittent fasting, was incredibly beneficial because I didn't need what I thought I would need to do, intermittent fasting for, which was losing weight.
Right.
I really needed it to get my hunger pangs under control and get the habit of eating at certain times of the day. So I was eating actual whole meals and not just like tiny little snacks, and getting that out of the way. And it helped me be more mindful of why I wanted something and what I was hungry for. For example, I don't really get hungry after 8 p.m. anymore. And I know the most common time for me to feel that urge to snack is at night. So I make sure I'm finished eating by like 7 or 7:30 and make it a nice hearty meal. That doesn't mean heavy. It doesn't mean fatty. Just nice and hearty. Oh, look who woke up.
Oh, look
Hello.
at you.
But if I don't feel satisfied after my meal, I am almost always, especially when I'm stressed or super happy or not so happy, I'll eat my feelings a little bit later.
Oh, yeah.
And, that way, making sure I'm mindful of what I'm eating, I can stop and ask myself, why am I hungry right now? Am I hungry because I need food? Or, most of the time it's because I'm not really hungry and I'm just trying to satisfy a feeling and not feed myself. And so now one of the things I do too is I usually grab a bubbly water because I also like the fact that all the bubbles and the carbonation makes me feel nice and full for a little bit. And that makes sure that my stomach doesn't say, hey, we need something in us.
Right.
So
yeah.
We talked about what you do, but with your tea, but is there anything else that you would recommend people do after dinner to help control hunger pangs?
After dinner, after dinner, like you said, like I think the biggest thing is making sure that your last meal is nice and hearty.
Yeah.
And a lot of this
and
is
satisfying.
just, satisfying, right? Like eat the fats, lots of protein.
Yes.
What we eat has a big effect on that. We tend to in this country, we tend to eat like a lot of refined carbs all the time, but at dinner, it's become like have a well-balanced meal and eat like a bunch of like spaghetti or have bread with your dinner. We've worked with a ton of people who are like, it's not dinner if it doesn't have French bread or garlic bread or there's no starch. Like I'm not, I feel like I haven't eaten anything. And that's a pretty major problem.
Yeah.
So what I eat for dinner is more important than anything, making sure that I'm hydrated throughout the day. So I'm going to kind of keep my habit in front of dinner, if that makes sense, in terms of the day. But and then that, like having that sort of like go to like, okay, like if I get hungry, I know that I just make some tea and I'm going to be okay.
Yes.
So
fair.
That is my advice.
Anything else we need to talk about when we eat?
No, I just want to say that like it gets so much easier once you break that habit.
Habit,
All
habits,
right.
habits. It's all about
Yeah.
habits, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
frustrating and so true.
That is why we run the habit reset
Yeah.
challenge, and because that works so much better than like
Yeah.
taking on crazy huge changes, right?
Yeah.
And doing the crash diet. Look, I lost 30 pounds in a month or whatever,
Yep.
crazy, and then yeah, it comes right back. All of us are familiar with that yo-yo, right?
Yeah.
So I want to help people stay out
Yep.
of that.
And on that note, before we go, if you are in the habit of snacking quite a bit and you don't want to be snacking anymore and you're really going to be trying to change some of your eating habits, I'm going to give you two pieces of advice. One, be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
And two, stick with it. Just stick with it for a few days, because the first few days you're in a habit
For
of
a
eating
while, yeah.
all the time. So you're going to want to snack constantly.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have to be patient with yourself, be patient with time, and get past those habits so that you can build some new ones.
Right.
And what should they do if they need help, Brandon?
Well, yeah. First, I was going to say our 8-week our habit reset is 8 weeks for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. It takes a while to really adopt these habits and to make them and to get comfortable with them. And yeah, if that's something you struggle with, that's why we do this.
Mm-hmm.
So reach out and ask us questions. And we're happy to help.
Yeah.
So and we'll totally respond. We're happy to have a conversation. If you have not sent us a message, do and I encourage you guys to take advantage of that.
We'll reach back out.
I always wished growing as I got into this profession that I had more people to talk to about this stuff. And for the rest of you, our community, keep doing what you guys do.
Yes.
Keep lifting each other up. Keep raising your hands when you need to be lifted up. That's really what we're all about here. If it's hard, if it feels like it's not working, right? Share that with us. And we want to be, here for that. And we want to be here to support you.
Yes.
But more than anything, keep supporting each other.
Yes.
Okay. And keep lifting each other up out there. We love you. Bye.
Bye.